Recently, we've seen NBA teams trade their future for a star or stars to build the next great dynasty. It's essentially going all in. And then just like the phrase in poker, going all in, there's a tremendous amount of risk. But everyone knows the phrase, high risk equals high reward. So how often does it work for NBA teams? Before we answer that question, we have to answer another question. Why are NBA GMs so willing to bet their careers that they've worked so hard to get on one move or a series of moves that mortgage a lot of their future assets? Well, it's actually rather simple. When teams don't win, the two easiest people to blame are your head coach and your general manager. Wayne Gretzky is the greatest hockey player to ever play. And his most famous quote is, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." Oh wait, was that Michael Scott's quote? But that's what these NBA GMs' mindsets are. They have to be aggressive because if you miss your opportunity, you might never have an opportunity to win. Another reason why GMs feel forced to go all in is that this is their one chance at this job they've dreamed about and that they've worked their lives for. This isn't basketball related, but when I saw this clip on Hard Knocks of Giants GM Joe Shane and his kids talking about who they should draft with the 6th overall pick.
Give me a name.
JJ McCarthy. Jaden Daniels. Trade up and get him. Why not?
Okay, if Jaden Daniels...
We only get this job once. Let's try to win.
I finally understood why general managers are willing to risk their careers on going all in. It's because if you play it safe, you could be Joe Shane and the Giants watching Daniel Jones stink it up. Wow, Jaden Daniels is absolutely killing it for the Commanders. And honestly, it could be Joe Shane's undoing, not getting Jaden Daniels. So then why do I bring up a football GM in a basketball video? Well, it's because this is for all sports. Being a GM is hard. But you're making it way harder by being passive and afraid to take a big chance. Here's what I know. Most rich billionaires who own NBA teams aren't patient. They want to win fast. They want to win now. Essentially forcing their GM's hands into making these all-in moves. So now that we understand why teams go all in and why they make these types of moves, let's examine some of them and let's see how it pans out for these teams. The best place to start is with the most infamous all-in trade in NBA history.
Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Jason Terry, all going to the Brooklyn Nets. Celtics get 3 number ones, 2014, 2016, 2018. Humphreys, Wallace, Evans, just a bunch of stuff.
Most of us know how this deal goes. The Nets trade the picks that become Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and the 8th overall pick, which ends up becoming Colin Sexton, which ends up being a huge part of the Kyrie Irving to Boston trade. And in return, they end up getting 96 games of Kevin Garnett and 75 games of Paul Pierce and 35 games of Jason Terry. It ends up being a horrific deal for the Nets. But hindsight is 2020. So maybe this deal did make sense for the Nets. They're getting 2 future Hall of Famers in Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce. The problem being is that they were both old. Paul Pierce was 36 and Kevin Garnett was 37. Okay, so then how did people believe this was a good deal for the Nets? This deal happened after the 2013 season where the Nets went 49-33, led by Joe Johnson, Darren Williams, and 24-year-old All-Star Brook Lopez. There was good reason to believe that the Nets could contend for a championship with this deal. So the Nets pushed all in, believing that this was the right deal to make. And for the most part, people believed it too. They had the 4th best title odds going into the year. The problem was Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce were just shells of their former selves. They were not the Boston Celtics, Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce. They were basically washed to this point. The Nets ended up winning 44 games, 8 under what their over-under was set at, and they took a 1-point win in a Game 7 to get out of the first round against the Raptors, just to get smashed by the Heat in 5. And so the deal ends up being an absolute disaster for the Nets. This is what kills the late 2010 Nets teams, this deal, and this is what builds the Celtics into what they are today. So then the next question is, did the Brooklyn Nets learn from their mistakes? Well, let's look into their next time they went all in.
Era 9 games into his 9th season wearing the Rocket uniform. 4-team deal, players winding up all over the place. James Harden in Brooklyn.
After years of the Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett deal haunting their 2010s, the Nets finally had some hope in the 2019 season. For the first time since 2015, the Nets had over 30 wins, going 42-40. And yeah, sure, they got smashed in the playoffs, but it was a fun Nets team, and led by D'Angelo Russell, who was an all-star that year. It looked like Brooklyn was building a good culture, and that 2019 season might be why Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving chose to sign with the Nets, because they were building a good culture under GM Sean Marks and head coach Kenny Atkinson. Without this fun 2019 season, KD and Kyrie probably signed in New York, where everyone thought they were going to go and pair up with Zion. Well, we know that's not what happened. And the 2020 season was basically a mess. They fired head coach Kenny Atkinson, who might be the reason why KD and Kyrie came to Brooklyn in the first place. Despite the low expectations, the Nets had an over-under of 43.5. They only won 35 games and losing 37 of them. And yeah, KD didn't play, but Kyrie barely played. And honestly, it kind of just felt like a mess. Everyone knew the 2021 season was the season for the Nets. The Nets' 2021 season was going pretty disappointingly to start the year. They were 7-6 on January 14th, so they decided to go all in on disgruntled superstar James Harden.
We're just not good enough. We don't. Obviously, chemistry, talent-wise, just...
At this time, James Harden made it clear that he wanted to leave Houston and join this super team in Brooklyn. In 2021, they don't win the championship because if Kevin Durant's shoe size was a little smaller, they probably end up winning the championship.
Gets it into Durant. Here is Durant moving on Tucker. He turns, he shoots. Yes!
And they were pretty banged up in the playoffs, so honestly, everything was looking pretty positive for the Nets going into 2022. Going into 2022, the Nets were clear favorites to win the championship, and that's not even close to what happened. Kyrie had a lot of weird COVID stuff where he couldn't play at home, and James Harden went, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. I want out, and they traded him to Philadelphia. This was basically 13 months after Harden was traded to Brooklyn, where they traded 7 first-round picks to get him, and they end up trading him to Philadelphia for essentially Ben Simmons and a few picks. Just a pretty disappointing return for what they gave up just a year before. And that's basically how the Nets' Kevin Durant, Kyrie, James Harden era ends. Doesn't really end up with much. Luckily for the Nets, they did get out of this situation pretty scot-free because they were able to trade Kevin Durant for such a haul from Phoenix, which we're going to talk about. They got their picks back from Houston, and then they also traded Mikal Bridges for so many picks also. So overall, Brooklyn kind of ends up being okay from this, but it was worth a risk to go all in. It just didn't work out for them. So let's talk about KD to the Suns. In 2023, Kevin Durant was traded to Phoenix, and he was traded for Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and 5 first-round picks. It was an absolute haul at the time. And the truth is, this story isn't done yet, but the Nets made out of, absolute bandits. Getting 5 first-round picks for Kevin Durant, and then Mikal Bridges, when they traded him, they got another 5 first-round picks. So the Nets made, absolute bandits. But the Suns going all in, it's not done yet, but it hasn't been great. It hasn't been great. They got swept in the first round last year. I will admit this, though. The Suns have looked pretty good so far. They're 4-1, and maybe they could make a run and make it far. So this story isn't done yet for the Suns, but it's not looking great. So we'll have to wait and see. Okay, so then let's talk about a time where going all in actually did work. In 2019, the Lakers were pretty disappointing with LeBron, so they decided to go all in on superstar power forward from the Pelicans, Anthony Davis. This deal was bound to happen because Anthony Davis made it clear that he wanted to go join LeBron and be in the Lakers. The trade went like this. The Lakers traded Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, 3 first-round picks, and a pick swap for Anthony Davis. And it was an absolute haul for the Pelicans getting 3 first-round picks, a pick swap, 2 guys who are former second overall picks, and Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball. And they were absolutely right to go all in. The Lakers end up winning the bubble championship in 2020 with the first year together with AD and LeBron. And the last few years, yeah, they haven't won a championship, but they've made a conference finals. They've looked pretty good, and it worked out for them. And for the Lakers, the story is still not done either because Anthony Davis looks like an absolute monster this year in real life. And LeBron's been good, and head coach JJ Redick is looking like he's changed his team around. And maybe that the Lakers can win one more championship with LeBron and AD. So now let's talk about what I believe is the most important all-in trade we've seen in the last 5 years, and honestly might be the reason why teams stop going all in now. When Kawhi Leonard signed with the Clippers traded for Paul George to pair the two superstars together, and they traded so many picks and their whole future to the Thunder. And this trade itself made the Thunder into what they are today. The same way that the Nets trade all those years ago made the Celtics what they are today. This Clippers trade has made the OKC Thunder. The Clippers end up giving up 5 first-round picks, 2 pick swaps, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And obviously the Clippers didn't know Shai would be what he is today. But it just sucks that they traded a guy who ends up being a superstar, an MVP candidate. And like at the time, it looked like the right decision. It looked like a move that, yeah, might tank their future. They're going to win a championship. They just got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. It's also important to add the Clippers have never made a conference finals up to this point. And so it made sense that they wanted to go all in on Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And going into that 2020 season, the Clippers were the #1 team in title odds. And everyone knows what happens in the bubble with Pandemic P.
They've gotten a number of second shots, though.
George.
After that 2020 meltdown, in 2021, they were 4th in title odds, so it still looked good, and then they finally made a conference finals for the first time in their franchise history. The problem was, in the second round, Kawhi Leonard tears his ACL, essentially killing their chances of making the finals and killing their chances in the conference finals against the Suns, which is basically the final time they have a real shot at winning a championship. The rest of the Kawhi Leonard and Paul George era with the Clippers ends with misery because Kawhi's injured a lot, Paul George is injured a lot. They end up trading for James Harden, which doesn't really amount to much last season. And then Paul George just walks in free agency, essentially ending the Clippers' hopes of winning a championship. And now they're looking old, and this is their best season they are going to have for the next 10 years because they have nothing coming in. They have no chance to rebuild their future. So now that we've went in depth about teams going all in and seeing if it works or not, let's just rapid fire some other ones that are important to add. The Russell Westbrook to Houston deal. It was a mess for the Rockets. Russ got traded for Chris Paul, 2 pick swaps, and 2 protected first-round picks. In this deal, they traded Chris Paul thinking that, oh, the Thunder won't be able to compete, and we're sending him to this desolate wasteland. And no, the Thunder ended up making the playoffs where they played each other. And yeah, the Rockets won. But that was the only series they ever won with Russ. They ended up trading him the year later. It was a mess for the Rockets. The Donovan Mitchell trade. The Cavs traded 5 first-round picks, 2 being pick swaps, Lauri Markkanen and Colin Sexton, for Donovan Mitchell. Has it been great for the Cavs? No, not really. They've made it out of the first round last year. They look really good this year, but just if you're going all in, it just hasn't been enough for Donovan Mitchell. It's been rather disappointing for the Cavs. Wow. While Lauri Markkanen has kind of blossomed into a star for the Jazz, and like it's not the worst trade for the Cavs because you re-signed Donovan Mitchell, and maybe this year they look good, maybe they could be something, but it ends up being a great deal for the Jazz. The other great deal for the Jazz is the Rudy Gobert deal. And yeah, maybe sure, the Timberwolves have looked better with Rudy Gobert than most people thought. They basically traded 5 first-round picks and Walker Kessler, which it was kind of funny after the first year of the deal that it looked like, is Walker Kessler going to be just Rudy Gobert again for the Jazz? Probably not, but it was just not a great deal for the Timberwolves at the time. And it's aged fine, but Rudy Gobert is probably not going to win them a championship, and they're not going to really get much out of them. So then what am I saying? Am I saying that teams shouldn't go all in? No, I don't think that's the case, actually. I'm just saying I think the frequency of these trades have to come to a stop and come to a halt for the most part. Like, these trades should be, oh, we are confident that this can win us a championship. And a lot of the times, like, these make sense because these trades feel like you can win a championship because of, but it doesn't always work out that way. I feel like the other thing that's important is that we can't be trading our whole future away because what if it doesn't work out? And I know you don't want to be so passive, but we haven't really seen it work out great besides the Anthony Davis trade. It's mostly the case because when you go all in, you're kind of shortening your timeline. You're making your window small to where you have to win and everything has to align. If injuries happen, like what happened to the Nets with KD and Harden, or what happened with the Clippers with Kawhi, this is what's going to happen. You're going to tank your future, and this is what the risk you're taking, that you might suck for a decade. And honestly, I can't wait to see when this next all-in trade's going to work. Maybe it's already happened. if you made it to the end today, please like and subscribe. It absolutely means the world to us. And also, if you want to see more of our content, check out our last video that Evan just posted about the NBA graveyard. And I hope you guys have an amazing day. And just thank you.